Hello, friends, and welcome to episode 4, I think, of the Chisscast, a podcast where I talk about my love for Grand Admiral Thrawn and his other Chiss friends, and sometimes non Chiss friends. So, if you're new here, hi, welcome. This is just my corner of nonsense. And if you're one of my Twitter mutuals, hi, and welcome back. I know it's a long time no see. It's been like 2 months, 3 months. I don't know. It's been a while, but this day, I have to make a comeback today. I have to record this today because I have so many thoughts. I'm gonna skip Chiss news and do that in a future episode because I literally cannot think about anything else except Choices of One, which I finished reading today. So, if you couldn't tell from the title of this episode, it's going to be about Choices of One and how it's an underrated, a really, really terribly underrated book. So, first of all, I have a bone to pick with y'all. Because whenever people talk to me about Thrawn books or other books that Thrawn was in, Choices of One was like always an offhand mention. Oh yeah, Thrawn is in this one. Yeah, it's a book about Mara or whatever. Like she's on the cover, so naturally at first I wasn't very interested because I don't really like Mara that much. But in general, like by everybody else who I talked to, like it's pretty much nobody talked about that book more than like a passing mention about it. And, well, in my search for more Thrawn content to satisfy my Thrawn cravings, I finally decided to read this book. I was trying to read the Noro Kongorama books that are called, I think, Clone Wars secret missions or special missions or whatever. I got like 3/4 through the first book, which is a short book and it's a children's book, so it shouldn't be that hard, but it was just like it wasn't really that captivating. So I still didn't finish that. So I started Choices of one day when I was feeling sad. And that was like, I don't know, like a week ago maybe. But in the past 2 days, I don't think I've read this much since since I was like in middle school or in elementary school. I literally sat for 2 days straight to finish this book because my brain could not even comprehend any other thoughts than this book and the plot and everything that was going on. I am so fixated on it right now. I am just shooketh by how good this book was, how engaging, how thrilling, and how exciting it was. Like, I couldn't pull away. I think, the beginning is always slow, to set up the plot, and, we know Timothy Zahn likes to have, 5 different POVs, and, do a bunch of, different characters, and then in the end they all come together and they play their part, and, the way that he weaves those threads of plot is always so fascinating to just experience. So, the beginning had to set up a lot of that. But even with the beginning, it starts with the Emperor and Cardass and Thrawn. You get Thrawn content in, the first pages, which, for comparison, in the Thrawn duology that is talked about a lot, I literally had to suffer through 1 3/4 of a long ass book to finally get to the part that I wanted to get to finally get to the Chiss, to finally get to that fortress and find out what that's all about. Meanwhile, this had Thrawn content in the first pages. So I was very, very pleased about that. And boy, what content that was. It was literally Thrawn with the Emperor talking about the Death Star 2 on Endor. Thrawn even said that, the Emperor shouldn't underestimate Ewoks, which is so cool, something that he would definitely say because, he's an alien and he knows obviously to not underestimate other species. So a lot happened in this book, and I'm gonna I'm gonna go through my reading thread that I made on Twitter, because yes, I made a thread, but it's hard to make as many comments as I want to make just by a few tweets. Oh yeah, this was the first Star Wars book that had a dramatis personae that I've read, I think, or maybe in the others I just skipped it. I don't know, because I read ebooks. I rarely buy actual books these days. But yeah, it was nice to see, because Tom said that the Chaos Rising book and the other books in this new Thrawn trilogy will have a dramatis personae. So that was my first glimpse at that. Also, literally, I don't know what this was in reference to, but I wrote Timmy Z be like, I'm gonna make all my OC super smart and insanely competent. And like, I remember that comment all throughout the book, because honestly, like, Mara is insanely competent and also apparently has morals all of a sudden. Like, she was a lot more mean in the original Thrawn trilogy, which I guess it makes sense, because like, she was devastated because she didn't feel like she had any purpose anymore after the Emperor died. But then, like, we're introduced to these stormtroopers that are also apparently good people and super competent. And then there's Pelion, who's also very perceptive, and like, he's one of the main characters in the book, and he's like super smart and stuff like that. So like, he literally, like, Timmy Z goes out of his way to make his characters super smart and super cool and super, like, like, you could almost say that they're overpowered. But, it's kind of nice, actually. Like, it's nice that Timothy Zahn is one of those authors that that the characters that he created are in good hands, because he doesn't want to hurt them. He doesn't want to kill them, with the exception of Thras. I'm looking at you, Timothy. If you kill Thras again, we're gonna come for you. Anyway, oh yeah, the part where Pelion wanted to say something to his commanding officer, Captain Drosan, I think. Yeah, I think it's pronounced Drosan. So basically, Captain Drosan, like, he wanted to say something or give advice, and the captain was like, "No, you may not." And I was like, yeah, I understand why that guy came to like Thrawn so much, because of course Thrawn would listen to his advice. Yes, and we arrived to Lord Odo, which I was completely bamboozled by, because this book is literally written to confuse you. I was shocked so many times. And this is just the beginning. Okay, so Lord Odo shows up, right? And because I think at that point it was clear that Thrawn was gonna go to the Pone system, I assumed that Lord Odo and his pilot were actually Thrawn and Cardass in disguise. And just because of the behavior. And I'll get to that in a moment, because that's what fucked me up the most. And when I realized that it was Nuso Espa all along, I was like, no way I was this stupid. But then I look back at the things that made me think that it was Thrawn, and I realized that it was written to confuse you and wonder who that is, because it was written like Thrawn. Okay, so this first quote is about his gray and burgundy hooded robe. And, like, if you're a Thrawn fan and you hear burgundy, you automatically think Thrawn. But yeah, this was just like an observation. The next screenshot that I posted was, correct, Odo confirmed. I trust you'll forgive my appearance. My reason for this visit must remain private and my identity unrevealed. So, seeing that Thrawn loves to be sneaky, I was like, is it Thrawn? And then I was like, it's Thrawn, isn't it? But then, like, there was a portion of the book where I thought that it was Nuso Espa, and then I thought it was Thrawn again, and then I was convinced that it was Thrawn. And then I was betrayed. All right, and then we go to Cardass and Thrawn POV, which is my favorite, one of my favorite things about this book. Okay, like first of all, like Outbound Flight was great, but the relationship between Thrawn and Cardass was more like mentor and mentee, kind of like Eli and Thrawn in the new Thrawn books. Like Cardass was Thrawn's guest, really, but now in this one, they really feel like it feels like they're friends. They are so domestic and so casual around each other. I made this observation earlier today, but literally, Thrawn has never been on a first name basis with anyone else in either the Legends continuity or the canon continuity, except for Cardass. Like, he even calls Eli Vanto or Eli Vanto or Commander Vanto and stuff like that. Like, I think there was one panel in the comic where Thrawn actually calls Eli Eli, but I'm sure that was just because of, like to conserve space or whatever. So he never called Eli by his first name. Meanwhile, in this book, like he addresses Cardass as George, and it throws me off every single time. In general, the way that they were so domestic around each other, like it was a delight to read. I was looking forward to these parts so much, especially in the first part of the book. Also, this is gonna be a long episode, so strap yourselves in because I have a lot to say about this book and a lot to scream about, apparently. Okay, so another reason why I thought that Lord Odo was Thrawn was because Thrawn and Cardass, like, were always, when they were talking, they were always in their ship. And like, I just presumed that he went back to the ship where it was docked. Like they went back to the ship and talked or something like that, or there were consoles in their quarters. But yeah, I was just so confused. And now it makes so much sense because they were in a ship following the Chimera everywhere. Yeah, they just didn't. It is, they remained unseen or undetected. Actually, I don't know. Maybe Nuso Eswa knew. He just was like, because that's the funny thing that, like, Thrawn is a military genius, but Nuso Eswa is also a military genius. So it makes things spicy. It makes things unpredictable. Like, these characters always know more than the narrative tells you. So you never know what they actually know. And some of these things were explained at the end, like at the end when Thrawn was talking to Cardass one last time. But some of these things we may never know. Also, Cardass being broody and like, why am I here, was so cute. He struck me as like a bored teenager, like, Mom, why did you bring me? Oh yeah, and then the legendary bickering between Thrawn and the Emperor when Thrawn asks for the 6-star destroyers, and the Emperor's like, why do you need them? And then proceeds to shit on aliens when Thrawn's literally an alien. I just love how fucking sassy he is. It was you who authorized me to make such surveys, Thrawn reminded him. And properly so, the rebellion is a threat, but hardly the most serious one facing the Empire. In your opinion, yes, Thrawn said. This bitch has no chill. No chill whatsoever. I love him so much. Oh yeah, then like right after that conversation, like right after reading that, I was like, how come the Thrawn duology gets all the hype without Thrawn even being in it, when here you literally have Thrawn beefing with the Emperor in the first pages? Like, honestly, I don't understand. The Thrawn duology is good, but also it was literally boring in a lot of places. And like the good parts, when it got good, when the plot got really good, was towards the end. And like this book, I know that it's a shorter story, so like the setup is shorter and the action, like there's a lot, the action starts quicker. This was the least boring thing that I've ever read. Not a single boring, well, like the beginning was slower, but like So, like, the opposite of boring. Exciting, exciting. Yes, English. Definitely. Oh yeah, the Emperor calling the rebellion invaders special interest. That was an interesting choice of words actually, because I think that special interest is usually used to refer to special interests that autistic people have, or other people on the autism spectrum. So that was a really interesting way to refer to that. Like I'm sure that could spark certain headcanons, and that's pretty cool. Yeah, and at that point, I was like, I got so invested in this, and I literally forgot that there's gonna be like Han and Luke and Leia chapters. Like, those chapters are always the one that I look forward to the least. English, am I right? Basically, like, I'm not as excited for those chapters, but then they're really exciting. Like, it's really fun, and I think that Zahn writes Han really well. He writes all of them really well, I think. But especially Han. Han is, I think, the most fun to write in general because he doesn't take anyone's shit. Also, Luke is so useless in this book. I love him. He's just like, he gets caught in the middle of everything, and he's just kind of like, what do I do? Because this is set in between A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back, so he's just like a baby. He's still a baby. He barely knows how to use his lightsaber, and he just gets caught up in all of this, and it's so adorable. He's like, I don't know what to do. Help! Oh yeah, the fact that the pilot was called Sorrow, which I later thought that like it was Cardass in disguise, but apparently not. It was an actual guy that Nuso as well manipulated and kidnapped his family. So that was really not nice. But I loved how his name was Sorrow, and I only realized the connection, like the pun, when I read that story that basically like the conversation that he had with Pelion. And I'm ashamed that it took me that long to get it, but I really like when people who write Star Wars things give character names like that. Like, for example, like Luke Skywalker is obviously, Skywalker. That's really cool. And then Ezra Bridger, I think, is my favorite Star Wars name, or one of my favorite Star Wars names. Of course, Thrawn is, like, it kind of lost its original meaning, or the intention behind the name, because I think, like, of course, like, he was supposed to be the villain, was supposed to be twisted and stuff like that, but then, things escalated. So the meaning of the word kind of lost the meaning when it comes to the character. So another another cool name that Zahn came up with was Colonel Vermal. I think in the Thrawn duology. And it took me so long to actually pronounce it out loud, and then I laughed for like 5 minutes straight. And of course, Sorrow is another one that is so cool. I'm still wondering what's the story behind the name Lord Odo, because that's also a fun name. Oh yeah, I was like, please, what is this Lord Odo guy, and where is he taking pills? I'm scared. Honestly, like, when he took Bellion to his quarters, it was so ominous. Like, what was that all about? And like at that point, I was like not sure who he was. But then later there will be parts that I will talk about that literally, like, that's how Thrawn acts. So I can't really blame myself for thinking that it was Thrawn for a good portion of the book. Oh yeah, also the part where Axlin, oh my god. Axlin was the fucking worst. Oh my god, like, ever since like his first appearance, I was like, I don't really okay, at first I was like, he's pretty cool. But then he started acting all bossy and pretentious, and I was like, I don't really like that, especially since he was mean to Han and Luke. And I was like, he's a rebel and he's from Alderaan, like, he has his trauma, whatever, I can excuse that. But then the bitch turned out to be a traitor, and my instinct, my intuition was right. I hate that bitch so fucking much. Oh my god, okay. So when he told Luke to come in separately, and Han could literally tell from Luke's flying style that it was Luke. I just love that Han is so much smarter and more clever and capable than everybody's giving him credit for, and that was kind of like his character arc in this book, like the whole thing about leadership. I really really like that, especially at the end, the clever thing that he pulled off. Okay, I'm getting carried away. Oh my god, I literally tweeted, I hate Axlon if he don't stop being an ass to Luke and Han. And I was right. I was right. It was 2 days ago, way before I found out that he's a traitor. I was right. Oh yeah, oh my god, I love this. So there was this line, Grand Admiral Zarin has a passion for music. Senior Captain Thrawn is insane over art. I knew a colonel once who collected different versions of Sabacc cards. So the name, especially the the Grand Admiral Zarin, and I know that a lot of people pronounce Savit as Savit, but I pronounce it as Savit, so the name was kind of similar. And then the fact that the Grand Admiral has a passion for music, like I just loved seeing the fact that Zahn had an idea for a Grand Admiral who is super into music in like 2011, I think this came out. So it's just fun to see that Savit was not really a new idea. Oh my god, so, okay, this is another tweet where I said, so it is Thrawn after all, isn't it? And it was a quote, the Emperor has asked Lord Odo to look into it and assign the Chimera to provide him transport and any support he may need. So that's why that was my first like proper hint that it was Thrawn, which at the time I had no idea that Captain Rasan was a traitor as well. So I assumed he was telling the truth. So I was like, if the Emperor himself authorized it, and if he called Rasan himself, makes sense that it was Thrawn just in disguise, because like I don't fucking know, like Thrawn just loves being like like he has his own little schemes. He doesn't explain shit to people, so if he wants to be in disguise, he has a good reason for it, and it makes sense. Like he Luso Eswa is crazy about him. We'll get to that, but like it makes sense that Thrawn would want to be in disguise when dealing with this guy. So that was my first hint. Okay, then the section of Thrawn and Cardass that absolutely fucking broke me. Like, it broke me so fucking bad. like that entire section, I was screaming. And crying, and oh my god. So Thrawn says, you really should stop that. And Cardass says, stop what? Thrawn says, you should stop pacing. It doesn't gain you anything. Like the banter. The banter. Oh my god, they're so domestic. And Thrawn saying, you never did before. Cardass saying, well, I do now. Literally married. Oh my god, I love them. And then, of course, the first part that broke my heart. He shook his head. Maybe because this is my last chance to do something useful for the rest of the galaxy. You've done any number of useful things, Thrawn reminded him, including the saving of my life. Oh my god, first of all, the outbound flight tease. Oh, that was a great book, but like, they're so sweet. But this is not even, this is just the beginning, okay? This is the one that I captioned, good fucking bye. You're here to protect the Empire from Warlord Nuso Eswa, but why am I here? Because my forces are busy in the unknown regions, tied down with the defense of my allies, Thrawn said. Because I'm alone, and it's always useful to have an extra set of eyes or hands. Because I'm alone! Because Thrawn basically saying that, bitch, I'm lonely, and I need y'all because you're my only friend. My heart. They're literally sometimes these bitches be more precious than Thranto, and I'm mad because Thranto is my favorite ship. Okay, and the final straw that absolutely just shattered me, and I could not function, for like a good 20 minutes. Thrawn smiled, and to Cardas's amazement, there was sadness in the other's normally calm expression. Because, he said quietly, you're the only one I trust. What the fuck, Timothy? How dare you? First of all, how dare you rip my heart out like that? The fact that Thrawn had to take his friend who's literally dying because it's the only friend that he's ever had, the only true friend, the only person he ever trusted. My God. Fuck. God. Jesus. Okay, moving on. Oh yeah. Like that was the thing that broke me, but another adorable thing is Cardass being protective of Thrawn. When Thrawn basically was like talking really casually about Vader, and Cardass is like, all the more reason not to leave the two of them together any longer than absolutely necessary. So that is adorable. Like also Cardass saying, I'm hungry, you want anything? And that is domesticity. Adorable domestic bliss. God, I fucking love this book. Like, imagine saying that the Thrawn duology is better than this. Like, it couldn't be me, honestly. Oh yeah, also the first description that we got of Nuso Eswa. He is constructed similarly to you, but with his covering surface smooth and soft and shimmering like a rainbow. Shimmering like a rainbow, like, Timmy Z really created a holographic alien who is very sexy and very evil and very dangerous. Like, I don't know if I've ever mentioned this, but I'm a hoe for holographic and iridescent stuff, like IRL. So the fact that Timmy Z created a holographic, basically literally like an alien with holographic skin, like, this is feeding me specifically me. I just, wow. Thank you, Timothy. Oh yeah, this is beginning of me thinking everything Lord Odo does is Thrawn, because Druson said, Lord Odo has informed me that those are in fact Rebel Alliance ships. You know, so Thrawn would know that kind of stuff. Oh yeah, also the whole thing about the Chimera going into the unknown regions where, I think Thrawn's Star Destroyer was fighting with Nuso Eswa's forces, and the fact that Thrawn was not on his Star Destroyer, and the fact that the Chimera helped drive out Nuso Eswa's forces just confirmed my suspicion, or rather belief, that Lord Odo was Thrawn in disguise. So, like, this book was really written to not be clear, you know, like you couldn't tell for sure, because like these two bitches really be similar. Can't believe that military geniuses are similar. Well, they make a good pair, to be quite honest. And we'll get to that when the flirting starts. Oh yeah, I was like, this man out here being in two different places at once. Senior Captain Thrawn and the Admonitor are also out there, and Lord Odo assures me we'll be joining with them somewhere along the way. So, I thought that Thrawn was talking about them himself. Once again, like, this book just bamboozled me to no extent. Oh yeah, also Pelion dragging Thrawn. The dubious assistance of another Star Destroyer and a small flotilla of smaller warships, under the command of an alien officer who was apparently so poor at the fleet's political games that he kept getting kicked off Imperial Center and booted out into the unknown regions. Drag him, king! Oh my god, I can't believe that like Pels, you know, goes from like being very like about Thrawn to absolutely adoring him, you know, character development or whatever. Oh yeah, this is another thing that Thrawn himself actually said, that I was like, what the fuck? And I'm still thinking about it. I'm like, what the fuck? Because Thrawn said, yes, Nuso Eswa will certainly be there. We need to be too. To make sure his game fails? On the contrary, Thrawn said softly, to make sure it succeeds. Once again, mixed signals. Like, I still don't understand, like, having read the entire book. What did he mean by that? Because, he didn't really want it to succeed. Like, he just needed to, well, first of all, he wanted to destroy Nuso Ezra, and second of all, like, he needed to, get the rebels, like, the rebel leadership to Vader. That was the deal that he made with Vader, apparently. The fact that this book also has Trader content is just astounding to me, because I know that a lot of my mutuals, well, I don't know how many, but quite a few of my mutuals love Thraninkin and Trader, and I really love them too, even though they're, like, it's not my favorite Thrawn ship, but it's one of my favorites, so, like, whenever I see that, I'm like, friends, come get y'all's content. So yeah, I'm still confused on what he meant by saying to make sure he succeeds. Also, Thrawn said softly, when talking to his totally platonic friend George Cardass, who is the only person who Thrawn is on a first name basis with. I see what's going on. I see it. Oh, also, I really thought that Nuso Eswa showed up in that seedy cantina that Han and Chewie were in, because it was the first alien of Nuso Eswa's species that, like, we as the reader met, like, like, in the flesh, not just talked about. So I was like, oh my god, what is Nuso Eswa doing in this cantina? But it was just one of his minions. Oh yeah, this part that says, Jade was ruthless enough with the traitors she was sent to deal with, but he'd seen her go out of her way to keep the innocent and loyal out of her line of fire. Like, bitch, where did that come from? Timmy, we need to talk. Like, I like characters, like, I like good characters, I like morally great characters, I like evil characters, but you don't have to make every single of your OCs to be good or have good morals. You don't have to, I promise you. She will be even sexier if you make her evil. But then again, she's not canon anymore. And thankfully, because I don't even... I don't want her to become canon again. I know she's one of the most popular Legends characters and has a cult following or whatever. I just don't care for her personally. Oh yeah, when Mara marches into Feruz's office, I think is how you pronounce it. I don't fucking know. These Star Wars names. And I don't think these books have audiobooks. Not that I've seen. I don't think every Legends book got an audiobook. Meanwhile, now every new canon book gets an audiobook, which is really cool. And I take that for granted, but, I should really appreciate that more. Anyway, so when Mara marched into Feruz's office, and I was like, holy shit, he gonna die, because he really did make a deal with the rebels. And then he was like so chill about it. And, like the whole revelation that he was forced to make a deal with the rebels, Nuso Eswa kidnapped his family and blah blah blah, like that was such a turning point. And it was really cool. Oh yeah, another comment that I made was, Timmy Z wakes up every morning and goes, how can I make rebels and Imperials work together in this one? And every single time he makes it work so well. Like, honestly, in the canon books, in the new canon books, not so much. But in Legends, like, half of his books are Imperials and rebels working together, or former Imperials and rebels working together. Honestly, like, Survivor's Quest, literally, Luke and Mara teaming up with Thrawn's people, when Thrawn was their biggest enemy in the original Thrawn trilogy. Then, of course, like, the whole Luke and Mara thing, the fact that they were enemies at first, and then became, oh my god, I can't believe Luke and Mara are enemies to lovers. Literally, like, one of the worst one of the worst ways that you can do enemies to lovers. Like, it was so stale. Anyway, I'm gonna leave my rant about Mara and Luke for when I talk about the Hand of Thrawn duology eventually. But yeah, I don't like them, as you can tell. Like, I like Luke as a character, he's one of my favorites, but like, I don't like him with Mara. Like, the dynamic is just so stale. Anyway. Oh yeah, then the whole mouse droid ballet. I think that was really cute, and that's when I was really convinced that it was Thrawn. Um, because like, that's the weird shit that Thrawn would pull. He would um just not explain anything and maybe explain something to one person. And he usually chooses a person who he thinks is really smart and capable and has the ability to learn, because like he explains things to Eli, explains things to Pharaoh. He usually doesn't bother explaining things to people who don't want to listen or who are too dumb to understand this shit. Even though, technically everyone's too dumb to understand his shit because he's a military genius. But that's what Thrawn does. And so at this point I was like convinced, yep, this is definitely Thrawn. So yeah. Me tweeting, Thrawn, you brilliant, beautiful bitch, when it was actually Nuso Espa. Honestly, like, Nuso Espa is also a brilliant, beautiful bitch. So I can't believe they are so similar. Also, a very important detail was the return of Poncho Luke. As y'all know, I love Poncho Luke so much. He is the softest and the most adorable Luke. And then the fact that he had a poncho in this book is just cherry on top. Oh my god, the revelation is Axel working with Nuso Espa with a lot of question marks. Oh god. Yeah, when he started shooting those stormtroopers, I was like, what? And there were so many moments in this book. It's like, like the people that you least expect. First Axelon, then who else? The Drusan was probably the most shocking one, but also the green aliens at the end. Like that whole thing. But we'll get to that. when Axelon was explaining himself, I was like, I hated him from the beginning, but I still feel betrayed, and that's the worst feeling, because like I was right to feel, like to find him weird and like his vibes were off, but I still felt betrayed by his betrayal. Oh yeah, that's another good quote. And who exactly was Nuso Eswa expecting to draw to Paul Major with an announcement of Feruz's death anyway? I wonder who. I still can't believe that Nuso Eswa engineered this whole thing just to get Thrawn's attention and get him to come and to fight with him, like just for Thrawn. He did the whole thing just for Thrawn, and if that ain't romance, I don't know what is. Also, I love how literally, like, you would think that like stormtroopers are the least interesting characters to write and read about, but Timmy Z just makes it work. That stormtrooper squad, I think it's called Hand of Judgment. The guys who apparently deserted. There was apparently a book about them working with like Mara Jade and Luke and Han before, but I haven't read that book. I know nothing about it, so I don't really care much. But in the course of this book alone, I started caring about these stormtroopers so much that at the point when they were first like fighting, they were fighting someone in the cellar. Like, oh my god, they got attacked like 5 times in that cellar. That was wild. But yeah, when they were fighting, I was like, yes, go! And I was so afraid at the end when they got basically kidnapped by the green aliens. I was so afraid, like, no, they deserve a happy ending. They're such good friends and they're so wholesome. Hardly, Axel assured him, even if it was Nuso Espa could put it back together. He's a military genius, he smiled tightly, who will soon be on our side. Oh yeah, I think it was in response to someone telling him that the whole thing will fall apart, and the fact that Nuso Eswa is considered a military genius, which I think he rightfully is because he engineered this whole thing, this whole shebang, just to lure Thrawn in. I think that's very sexy of him. That is super attractive. I have to stand. Oh my god, yes. When they killed Axlon, I was like, yes, yes, God, yes, finally. It was so satisfying. Also, when Mara decided to check the safe room for Feruz's wife and daughter, I was like, that's where I thought they were hidden because like the the safe room was mentioned way too many times for it to not be relevant. Like it was just being mentioned again and again, and I was like, what if they're in the safe room? Like because at first, obviously I thought they were somewhere like on Nuso Eswa's ship or something like that, but then I was like, what if they're just in a safe room and they've been there all along? But, I was partially correct, but even then, I wasn't. And I just love how many times this book threw me off in a good way, sometimes. Oh yeah, me complimenting Lord Odo's cape, thinking it was Thrawn, but still, once again, Muso Eswa is also sexy, and I think he should have a cape as well, because capes are sexy. Okay, this is another reason why I thought Lord Odo was Thrawn. He was like, forgive me, I misspoke. First of all, that's what Thrawn says. Literally, I can give you quotes, actual quotes from some Thrawn books where he actually says that. Forgive me, I misspoke, Odo said, coming to a halt beside Rasan. He is risking his Karags, but he's doing so in order to gain victory. Observe how each time the Karags block fire from the enemy cruisers, the Monitor is freed to lower its shields long enough to send a volley of one of the enemy's other ships. This is actually a piece of tactical information that I actually understood, which usually never happens in Thrawn books. I just read it, I'm like, I don't understand anything, but he's really smart, so that's sexy. So, first of all, this is Thrawn-splaining at its finest. That's what Thrawn does. He explains things to his subordinates. And so naturally, like, at this point, I'm convinced that Lord Odo is Thrawn. And you can probably see why. I just never made the connection that Thrawn was actually in a separate ship with Cardass. They were flying behind the Chimera. And I don't think it was ever explicitly mentioned until the very end, when they were talking about the Shadow ship. Oh yes, another very important reason why I thought it was Thrawn. He was explaining, and then he says, he paused expectantly like a teacher waiting for his students to come up with the correct answer. That's what Thrawn does. That's what Thrawn has been doing for the past 3 books. And this was written in 2011. Like in this book, Thrawn is pretty close to the Thrawn that we know from the new canon books. So more and more I realized that it was intentional to confuse you and to make you wonder if this is actually Thrawn, because the behavior is too on point. It's too similar. And, so like since I've read the new canon Thrawn books so many times, like, I would know. Oh, I also made a comment. Also, I bet Park can recognize Thrawn's voice because Thrawn isn't using a modulator. Once again, obviously not true because it was Muso Eswa. It was the rebellion, Odo said darkly. Of course it succeeded. So, that was a not very Thrawn thing to say, to be honest, but once again, at that point, I didn't even question it anymore. Another interesting part in this book. One other thing, Odo said. Will Senior Captain Thrawn be arriving at Pole Major with the rest of your force? I'm not sure precisely where he is at the moment, Park said. However, the summons I've sent should reach him. So, once again, like, I thought that he was just, like, asking this specifically to, like, if Nuso Eswa was listening, to let him know that he will be there, or whatever, but now it makes sense that he Nusa Eswa just wanted to make sure that his space warlord enemy boyfriend was gonna actually show up to the date. So, reasonable. Oh yeah, and then we get your actual Thrawn and Cardass and more banter. Cardass saying that was close. And Thrawn's like, not really. I fucking love him. He's a disaster. He's terrible. I love him so much. Oh yeah, a quote that I captioned as romantic. He wants to eliminate me as a threat, of course, Thrawn said calmly, just as I wished to do to him. So that was very sexy. In general, like the amount of flirting between these two. Thrawn smiled faintly. If I know Nuso Eswa, very likely both. Well, if I know Nuso Eswa, I see how it is, Thrawn, I see how it is. Oh yes, another quote from Pelion about Thrawn. Thrawn might not have the raw political skill that a fleet officer needed to keep himself moving smoothly up the ladder of success, but he did have courage. That is adorable because my boy has so much courage. And that actually made me think about Chaos Rising and how we're probably gonna see little Thrawn being very brave and very heroic, and he's like, I can do anything! And then he's gonna probably get burned really badly eventually, and it's gonna be angsty and sad. But it's still gonna be fun because, TVZ did say that Thrawn can never lose unless you throw something super unpredictable at him, like the Force. Like he will gather enough information until he can until he's absolutely sure he can win. Also, the fact that there were apparently alien ships in Thrawn's task force, and it wasn't specified what kind of alien ships, but I presume it's Chiss ships, and that is really cool. Actually, now that I think of it, he was working with a Trukri, I think the alien race was called. He was working with them as it was revealed in the end, so maybe it was their ships, actually. At that point when reading, I assumed they were Chiss ships because it would make sense, but now that I think of it, they might not be. Oh yeah, when Pelion was like, I'm gonna find Lord Odo, and I was like, oh, did Thrawn already leave for his Star Destroyer? Yeah, about that. And then me realizing that it was Nuso Eswa all along, and just the amount of betrayal and shame that I felt in that moment was indescribable. But I got over it, because like I said, it was really, 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 really written to look like Thrawn. Like, come on. It really was. Oh yeah, when Pelion was talking on the comlink to Thrawn and Nuso Eswa at the same time, and I captioned the quote, Pelion and the worst Zoom conference he's ever had. Like, imagine being Pelion and listening to Thrawn and Nuso Eswa, evilly flirt with each other by threatening each other or whatever. Like imagine being in that spot, I would love to, but I imagine he didn't. I mean to destroy you, Captain Thrawn, Nuso Eswa said, his voice soft and cold. But first, your soldiers and subordinates are going to watch as you make your final, fatal choice. So, if that ain't sexy, I don't know what is. Oh yeah, also this quote. But enough of Nuso Eswa's challenge had gotten through to make it clear that this was some kind of personal issue. Very personal, they have a crush on each other. Literally the last quarter of this thread is me tweeting about Thrawn and Nuso Eswa's interactions, and honestly, that's very valid to me because they're the coolest characters in this book. Also, okay, it is time to talk about Han and his command abilities, like the way that he just took control of that orbital station. Like, he arrived there, I think, to check what was the firepower of the station, and whether the rebel ships could get through without much trouble. But then the whole Star Destroyer thing happened, and he reacted so quickly, and his solution was so cool. I am so proud of Han Solo. I've always loved, like, Han is one of my favorite Star Wars characters. I feel like he's a little bit overshadowed by my love for Thrawn and all the Chiss characters now, but like in the first year that I loved this franchise, Han was like my second favorite character after Luke, and I still love him so very much. I love everything about him. He's precious and wholesome, and the fact that he was so quick to react, so quick to come to a solution. Like, he knows a lot from his travels across the galaxy and smuggling and stuff like that. And he knows a lot about weapons, and he has some tactical knowledge. And one of the most important things about that the whole thing that Han did at the end of this book, is the fact that later Thrawn said that the tactic that the station used to destroy the gunships from Pol Minor, Nuso Eswa's gunships from Pol Minor, was really good. And that was Han's idea. So basically Thrawn said that Han's tactic was really good. And I've never felt more proud in my life. I feel like a proud mother. Like, yes, Han, maybe you were approved by the senpai. But yeah. We're over 1 hour in. Can you believe? This is gonna be the longest podcast episode yet. Oh yeah, oh my god. Nuso Espa had called it alright. Thrawn's entire reputation and career were on the line here. And my first thought, after reading this, my first immediate thought was of the meme, I'm about to end this man's whole career. Because honestly, like, that's basically what Nuso Espa was trying to do. Ah yes, more flirting. Captain Thrawn, Nuso Espa's mocking voice came from the Lost Reef's cockpit speaker. Your time's running out. How can you not? Like, how can this book be such a hidden treasure when it has shit like that? Honestly, like, I know that the original Thrawn trilogy is iconic, and I can't really, like, I know that it has reasons for being iconic, because it was the first Star Wars books that were not, like, movie adaptations or whatever. But the fact that things like the Thrawn duology is being worshipped more than this is definitely unfair, and I will never stop being mad about it. Oh yes, another thing that I captioned with, that's sexy. He looked at Cardass, and it seemed to Cardass that a small smile touched the other's lips. I choose neither. And if that ain't sexy, oh my god. Like, literally, I'm so in love with Thrawn and Nuso Espa. Every single thing that they say or do, I'm like, oh my god, my brain is melting. It's so hot. Oh my god. I deadass thought that they were gonna kill the hostages. Speaking of that, that was the point when, once again, I remembered just how well Timothy Zahn is able to build tension. He literally makes it so that you have no idea until the very last moment how the fuck are they gonna pull this off. And like, at that point of the book, it's like, Thrawn looks like he's stuck with no choice. Like, Nuso Espa has surrounded him. He's gonna have to sacrifice either the Chimera or the I think it was called the Golan station. Then you have the stormtroopers in that cellar being surrounded and, fighting. And then you have Mara and Luke, who are both cornered and pretty much have nowhere, like, pretty much have nothing to do. Then you have Leia and the Rebellion, who basically walked into a trap of all of those gunships, and the gunships start firing on them, and you realize that they don't stand a chance. And literally every character in that book is pinned down. And there's like maybe like 1 or 2 chapters left of the book. And you have no idea how they're gonna pull anything off. And then somehow they all pull through, all of them. And finding out how they pull through is so amazing. Well, I guess the Thrawn, the Thrawn part of it was less satisfying than the others. Because, as always, I expected some, like, brilliant tactical stuff. And, like, Thrawn basically just... Okay, the whole thing with moving the Chimera, using the tractor beam to move the Chimera, was really fascinating because that's another thing that I could actually understand. Like that is another thing that I could actually understand what Thrawn meant when he was Thrawn-splaining, because like I said, usually I don't. So that was really cool, but then when Nuso Eswa started calling more of his ships in, I was like, oh my god, how is he gonna do that? He only has pretty much 1.5 Star Destroyer, and pretty much the other ships don't count. Pelion thinking that Thrawn was gonna use the TIE fighters to overwhelm Nuso Eswa's 50 ships. That was adorable, I can't blame him. But then Thrawn literally just calls Vader and his fleet, come on. Come on, I expected something more exciting, I guess, but still that was really sexy. Imagine 6 Star Destroyers and then Super Star Destroyer jumping out of hyperspace. Star Destroyers jumping out of hyperspace will never not be hot. Don't care what your sexuality is, don't care what your gender identity is, a Star Destroyer jumping out of hyperspace is sexy as fuck, and we all can agree with that. So... there's the hot take of the day. The hot take of the day is actually that this book is better than the Thrawn duology. But yeah. Oh yeah, Thrawn saying slowly in that one part when he was ordering the Chimera to reel him in with a tractor beam. He was he said slowly, and I just lost my shit because apparently I'm at the point where I lose my shit when Grand Admiral Thrawn, or rather Senior Captain Thrawn, says slowly twice in a row. And finally, Thrawn-splaining for real when he was explaining the tractor beam thing. I was so happy to see it because I didn't realize how much I missed Thrawn explaining shit for an entire book, because we didn't really have that in this book, there were just bits and pieces of Thrawn being there. Okay, more flirting. Nuso Eswa's predetermined path. Thrawn continued. What do you think, Nuso Eswa? Very clever, Thrawn, Nuso Eswa said through the speaker. I hate them so much, they're perfect! Another thing that I captioned with sexy. Oh my god, can I stop? Nuso Eswa gave a sort of whistling snort. Don't insult me, Thrawn. Do you truly believe I hadn't prepared for this possibility? Yes, I do, Thrawn said calmly. The moment is now, Nuso Eswa. Agreed, the alien said. The moment is indeed now. What the fuck? You write this shit, Mr. Zahn, and you expect me to not just lose my shit over these two characters? The chemistry. Mara and Luke never had this chemistry. Mara and Luke never could even dream to have this type of chemistry, but hey. Oh yes, another important Han quote. Leadership, Riken had lectured him, was all about responsibility and consequences. Whatever Han did right now would have consequences, some which he might never know about, others of which might come along 3 minutes from now and smack him in the back of the head. Well, the ending was very Han, but the fact that in the beginning of the book, basically Riken gave him a lecture about leadership and what it means, and by the end of the book, he proves to be a capable leader, and I'm just so happy. This makes me so happy. It comes now to the end, the voice repeated. Our master has achieved his goal of luring his enemy to the system. We no longer require that the governor die in any specified way. So basically, just confirms that Nuso Eswa did do all of this just to lure Thrawn in. And they say romance is dead. Honestly, lies. Okay, so this is the part where I think the True Kree tell the stormtroopers that they want to take them to their master. And they ask, this master being? The Great One, Vantar said. The leader of we who consider ourselves the true chosen. So this is another thing that who else? I think Rusan said that, or another of the people who work for Nuso Eswa. So naturally, I think the natural assumption is that, oh my god, these guys work for Nuso Eswa too. And then they lead the stormtroopers to their ship which is one of the Nuso Espa's alien warships. So, like that's natural assumption that they do work for him. And I'm like, oh my god, these stormtrooper guys are in for it now. They're gonna die. I literally captioned it, I hate it here. Because honestly, like, how many times in this book have I, like, trusted or someone trusted a character to be genuine and then they turn out to work for Nuso Eswa? Oh my god, and then some more flirting from our beloved warlords. What wasn't clear was why Thrawn continued to taunt him about it. 28 fire kilns against 2 Star Destroyers, the senior captain commented as the final group began to deploy to their spots in the battle line. Are you so frightened of me, Nuso Eswa? Thrawn, I swear to fucking god! I swear to fucking god, I hate him. Oh my god. Oh, also when Thrawn was broadcasting this, the transmission of Nuso Eswa, talking about how basically all of his allies, or like the the people that he enslaved are actual slaves, and Thrawn broadcasted it into the unknown regions, I thought that it was actually like a call for assistance, and I was like, is he gonna call like his allies, or is he gonna call some Chiss ships? But apparently it was just to broadcast it to, like that trope where somebody is revealing their true intentions and you broadcast it to the people who are oppressed by that person, and then the people turn against them. That is a very good trope, actually. I really love that trope. So Thrawn basically did that, and I think that's very sexy of him. Also, the Thrawn and Vader content in this book was pretty iconic. Because Vader was so mad, and Thrawn was like, but my lord, I did do what you asked. And the fact that this book pretty much said that, at least in the old continuity, in the Legends continuity, Thrawn was the one who suggested to Vader that the rebels are gonna be hiding on an ice planet. That was really cool. I just love things like that. Something about the main storyline was a direct result or an indirect result of my favorite's actions, which my favorite right now is Thrawn. So I'm actually thinking about how lucky Thrawn fans are, because there's so much Thrawn content. Like in canon, you have a show, 2 seasons of a show, you have 3 books, soon to be 4 books. And then in Legends, you literally have like 10 books plus a bunch of short stories. I was informed today by my mutuals that there's actually a short story in the 20th anniversary edition of Heir to the Empire about Thrawn and Nuso Eswa. So I'm gonna be going to read that because I'm excited. Another thing I really like is that Mara was missing her stormtrooper friends. I think that was really adorable. Like I said, I'm not a big Mara Jade fan, but the fact that she actually felt an emotion for once, it was really nice to read about. Also, I'm a sucker for friendship, so I'm like, yes, queen, I miss them too. And then cut to the stormtroopers POV, and they're about to meet with the, what do they call it? Master. Yeah, the alien's called Master. And I was like, holy shit, are they gonna meet up with Nuso Eswa? And then Thrawn says, hi, welcome to my crib. I would like to recruit you. And he recruits them, and they call themselves the 501st, which answers my question that I had. Well, like, I didn't really question it that much, but it made sense then why in Survivor's Quest there were stormtroopers from the 501st, but it was somehow unrelated to the 501st that Vader had. So the fact that Thrawn in general in Legends was building his own empire in the unknown regions, that is supposedly really fair and really cool. Yeah, I really like that. I hope that whatever happens in the new Star Wars canon, and however many books Timothy Zahn will write about Thrawn, I hope that he gets to tell some sort of a similar story. Even though I feel like the future of Thrawn, uh, when it comes to the what happens after Rebels, I think he's gonna go back to the Chiss Ascendancy one way or another, because it literally says that the Chiss Ascendancy is at war, so not like he's gonna ignore that. But yeah, I really like the idea of, in Legends, Thrawn building his own empire and actually being good, so. And then the final conversation between Thrawn and Cardass was also really cute. Cardass was saying that he knows a place that might help him put his life back together, but he doesn't know. And Thrawn says, "Whether it can be done?" Thrawn asked quietly. "Or whether you want to try?" Cardass snorted. "I never could fool you, could I?" "Not often." And I think it's just so cute how they're literally like they're friends. They're friends because there's no commanding officer and subordinate relationship. Even though Eli doesn't really have that relationship with Thrawn in Treason, it's still very much felt like that. Like they've always been friends. They've been pretty much friends from the beginning, but they never had that closeness that is depicted here between Thrawn and Cardass, and I kind of feel sad about that. I hope we get to see that in the future. Oh, also there was this that I did not understand. "And in your part of space?" Cardass asked. Thrawn shrugged slightly. "A work in progress," he said, "but we will succeed." His throat tightened. "I've seen the future, George. We will succeed because we have no other choice." Now, I want to know what he meant by "I've seen the future." The fuck did you mean, Thrawn? Because according to Mr. Timothy Zahn, he doesn't have any force ability. So what did you see, Thrawn? Also, I was confused about the work in progress part, but like now that I've read the whole thing and he talked about his own empire that he's building, makes sense. He's trying to build his own military power that could withstand, the dangers from the unknown regions and probably protect the Chiss, and to be slightly better at doing the job than the Empire or the Chiss, I presume. So yeah, that was all the notes I guess that I took on, while reading this book. I did feel really ashamed and embarrassed and insecure about the fact that I didn't realize that it was Nuso Eswa all along, like that Lord Odo was Nuso Eswa. But looking back and reading all those quotes, it's more than clear why. Because I think it was intentional, to write them so similar. Because, like, the pattern of speech, even the pattern of speech is so similar that you just can't be sure. You can't be sure. Plus, the guy literally wears a mask and nobody knows who he is, and he's smart, so, totally makes sense why I thought it was Thrawn for a while. And, like, at first I was confused. I was like, is this Thrawn? Is it Nuso Eswa? No, I think it's Thrawn. So, yeah. And it turned out that I was fooled. I was fooled along with everybody else, but it was the good kind. I think that it was one of the most entertaining books that I've ever read, and I think that most Star Wars books are very entertaining because it's Star Wars, it has like the whole universe just makes me very happy. But the way that this was written, it was, well, first of all, it was one book, it wasn't like a trilogy or a duology, so it didn't feel slow. There were just so many unexpected turns. So many. Like, and I think that's what Timothy Zahn is the best at. He's so good at writing those kind of mystery stories where you are so invested, you want to know who did this and what's gonna happen, how they're gonna go, how are they all gonna get out of this. I just loved the sort of like a mystery, like detective element in this story. All of them trying to figure out who is working for Nuso Eswa, how to stop Nuso Eswa, and stuff like that. When it comes to Thrawn himself, I feel like since this is one of the later books, he is a lot more like our Thrawn. And I say our Thrawn because the canon Thrawn is the Thrawn that a lot of us fell in love with. So my Thrawn is like the new canon Thrawn, the books, the Rebel show, the infamous Luke Ross comic that we all worship. Like that's my Thrawn, and this was so similar to my Thrawn. I had such a good time, and his whole relationship with Cardass is so adorable. They're so cute. They just really act like true friends. It really feels like they've known each other for so long. And as I always say, Timothy Zahn is actually better at writing romance when he doesn't write romance. He's so good at writing those deep connections that can be interpreted as romance, as seen with Thrawn and Cardass, and Thrawn with Eli, and even Thrawn with Anakin, Thrawn with Vader. I guess I just really love seeing Thrawn have friends and have people who he cares about and who care about him. I feel like that was one of the most special things about Treason as well. The fact that Thrawn had like 3 people on his ship that deeply cared about him. It was Arlani, Eli, and Pharaoh. Those, I think, they're like his truest friends in the new canon. But once again, we're not talking about the new canon right now, are we? It's really late. I really don't know why I decided to record this podcast right now. It's nearly midnight. But I had a really good time reading this book. I literally couldn't put it down since about yesterday afternoon. I stayed up until 5 a.m. reading it. I woke up 6 hours later, and the first thing that I did in the morning after eating breakfast was sat down, read all of it, then drew that picture of Thrawn and Nuso Espa. That's I think the fastest that I've read a Star Wars book. If we don't count Treason, because I actually listened to Treason and didn't read it. Reading takes a little bit longer for me, so I was so invested. I was so obsessed. It's such a good book. It can't even compare, I think, to the Hand of Thrawn duology. The duology once again had that. The best thing about the duology was once again Zahn's ability to weave the plot threads together until the very end when you think like, oh god, how is this gonna work out? And it works out. And of course, well, my favorite part about that duology was the Chiss parts, which it really wasn't a lot. Compared to this book, this had a lot more Thrawn in it. Than something that is literally called the Thrawn or Hand of Thrawn duology. And you might be asking, why am I not comparing it to like Survivor's Quest or Outbound Flight or the original Thrawn trilogy? Why necessarily Thrawn duology? Well, Outbound Flight is my favorite Legends book ever. It's the first one that I've read, and it's still the best. It has Baby Thrawn in it. What more could you possibly want? Survivor's Quest is similarly to Outbound Flight, another favorite because it was just god tier. It gave us Chiss, gave us lots of Formby content. Oh my god, Formby is quite a character. I hope we see him again in Chaos Rising. But yeah, there was so much more Chiss content than even in Outbound Flight. I feel like we got to see the most of Chiss culture in that book, which I also don't see a lot of people talk about. A lot of people talk about Outbound Flight because it's one of the most popular Legends Thrawn books besides the original trilogy, but I don't see people talk about Survivor's Quest, even though it doesn't have Thrawn in it, but I feel like the plot is better. It's easier reading because you don't have all the tiny plot threads and different POVs that you have in Outbound Flight and many other Thrawn books. And then, of course, I can't really compare Choices of One to the original Thrawn trilogy because it was the original Thrawn trilogy. It was the first thing that came out, and it's obviously iconic because it was the first, and it is the most well-loved thing in the entire Legends continuity up to this day. I'm comparing it to the Hand of Thrawn duology because after the original Thrawn trilogy, those are the books that everybody recommends you. Those are the books that everybody talks about. And I understand that it makes sense to read them first, but the amount of hype that the duology gets I feel like Survivor's Quest and Choices of One deserves just as much, if not more. I would personally say that Survivor's Quest and Choices of One deserve way more hype than the duology. Because it just, the plot is great. There's brand new, really unexplored territory. The plot isn't necessarily about the rebellion, it goes into something new and exciting. Choices of One, from the cover, it was supposed to be apparently about Mara Jade, but the fact, like, Mara Jade feels like she's one of the main characters, but she doesn't feel like the main character. And the story isn't really about her. The story is about Nuso Eswa, really. This book is about Nuso Eswa. And then Survivor's Quest is a story about the Chiss and the Vagari and the survivors of Outbound Flight. So I like them because they delve into unfamiliar territory, but I also, of course, like the addition of familiar characters in them. Like, it's always nice to see the original trio, and I feel like a lot of the books would feel more empty without them, even if they're not the main focus of the book. So yeah, Choices of One writes, go read Choices of One if you haven't yet. It's so fucking good. I can't recommend it enough. It's definitely jumping into the number 3 spot of my favorite Legends books right after Survivor's Quest. So yeah, it's been 1.5 hours. I am very tired. I hope you enjoyed this extensive review of Choices of One. I just had to get this out of my system. So if you're still here listening, thank you and I love you. So yeah, until next time, and may warrior's fortune smile on your efforts.